Welcome to the Mindful Creative Show. We share inspirational chats all about mindfulness and creativity, as well as brief practices and tips to help you with your own self-care practice at home. And today I'm so excited to have a friend and colleague on the show, Jools Sinclair. I'd love to share just a very brief bio and then I will bring Jools on. So Jools is a best-selling author of 20 books, as well as an entrepreneur, an educator, and a book coach. She's the creator of the See the Beauty program, which helps people add more love and gratitude to their lives. And Jools, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Cynthia, thank you for having me. I'm beyond thrilled to be here. I love your work. I think it's so deep and so meaningful. And I feel very honored that you invited me to your new show. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so happy to have you. Jools and I met a couple of years ago with an online retreat that she was hosting. She asked me to come on and share a mindful art workshop. And one thing that I noticed, Jools, that came up with students in that, but also with my other online students, is that sometimes there's this deep longing to create, whether that be writing or drawing or painting, but this desire to want to create and to create consistently. And sometimes things get in the way, and that can be really challenging. And the fact that you've written 20 books, which I think is written and published 20 books, which I think is amazing, speaks to this, being able to produce and to show up consistently with your creativity. So I'd love if you could to just maybe share how you've been able to maintain a consistent creative practice and any tips that you might have around that.
I love this question. I think about it a lot, and it's funny because I look back and I'm like, well, yes, I am consistent, but I, just like everybody else, honestly, Cynthia, I go through the same process of these kind of lulls where I'm almost like, I almost need a little break from the creativity, right? And then when you have to get back into it, there's all these voices that show up like, why aren't you doing this? You should be doing this. This would be good for you. And I'm sure that a lot of your viewers probably have that too. And then there's also that fear that you have to deal with. And every book I start again, I deal with that because you have the blank page. And, I always have usually a few lines I can put on there, but then that's it. I know you have like painters and artists and writers probably listening. For me, it really helps, just to break things down in the beginning. So I'll tell myself 500 words, and they can be the worst words on the planet Earth that I am creating, but just 500 words today. And you do have to kind of get into that habit if you want to produce, right? I mean, I do have to pull myself out of that lull. And that's one of the ways I do it. Just baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. And before you know it, you'll be in that other mystical creative world. So that would be my number one tip is, and just be gentle with yourself, because I love all of the creativity that's online right now because we're all creators. And it's really, I think like your beautiful program really speaks to people to remind them that you're a creator. You can do this. You can do this art. You can do this mindfulness art. You can do this writing. It's just a matter of shifting your thought and starting a daily practice, which, doesn't have to be 365 days a year, but to get, where you want to go, just like a little bit each day.
I love that you name the struggles that can come up, I think, for so many people. And this perception sometimes that can be of, I need to show up every single day. I need to do this huge project. This pressure that sometimes that can be placed, whether it's external or internal, but just to hold that really gently and softly and say, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm going to set these small tips or small things that I can do to just inch my way towards my own creative practice, however that looks like for me. And I love that you also talk about that natural ebb and flow. Oftentimes, it makes me think of wintertime. It seems very quiet with winter, but the roots are still like so deep and nourishing and just getting ready for the next season.
Yes, that is such a beautiful metaphor. And that's exactly it too. I mean, you've just hit it perfectly. And in those winter months, right? Sometimes because I'm a writer and I write mysteries, and they're very plot driven and character driven and settings. Probably like 3.5 weeks ago, I published my 20th book, Chasing the Ghost. So after that, I always need a break. But what I found is like, sort of, that's like the winter, just what you're saying. And it's such a wonderful time to turn to other things and absorb things. And I love watching movies. So I give myself plenty of time to watch movies that maybe I hadn't been able to do when I was working really hard. Just kind of like feeding that creativity in another way, and and letting it just kind of soak in and get in. And then when you're ready, then go back into that practice. That 500 words a day is a nice sort of like a bridge, really, to get in back into your game. Or I don't know, Cynthia, you tell me, because I know you're an artist, and it's like, what would you do? What would 500 words a day be in the art landscape? What does that look like?
Yeah, I love that question. What I've been sharing a lot recently here on the YouTube channel and with my students, especially with the last year, with everything that's been going
Yeah.
on in times of Rona and just having challenges with that, is really simple 5-minute mindful art activities. I often also, for students in my teacher trainings online, I give them an invitation to have a morning musings practice so they can create their own practice, whether that includes writing or really brief mindful art activities. And maybe they're doing that for 15 minutes a day. And I call it morning musings. It's coined off of Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, her morning pages, but it
Beautiful.
doesn't have to be in the morning.
Oh, I love that though. I love that. And that
Yeah.
must go back to just exactly what you're saying, where you're just kind of, you're just like continuing to practice. So you're able to, and when a project comes up, you're able to build on that, because you're in that flow. Everything's about getting back into the flow, isn't it? That's really what I find.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this reminder that it's always there and it's present, and it's just a matter of when is it serving us also to step into it. I share a wheel of life worksheet that just shows how you're feeling in different areas of your life. And I often will mention to my students, if you feel really dissatisfied in one area or really drained, there's probably a good reason for that. And it might not be that we need to shoehorn anything in there. It's just, how do we notice it and take care of ourselves? And I love what you were just saying around to refill your well with perhaps doing other groups online or listening to something or watching something, like having these other facets of other people being creative that
Yeah.
is really inspiring to bring into your world. So I love that you shared that as something you do. I think that's a great tip.
Thank you, Cynthia. And it's funny because it took me a while to realize that that was okay. It's funny because when 44, which is my series, right? I wrote 13 books in that series. And so the first one went viral, and I think I've told you this story already, but it's very exciting, this crazy energy of like when thousands and thousands of people are reading your work. It really is. It's like this whole energetic, that it was almost like hard to breathe, right? And so it was also the beginning of sort of this crazy cycle where, okay, I've got to write the next one. I've got to write the next one. I've got to write the next one. And indie publishing was just like exploding, and people would read my books literally in 3 hours and be like, well, where's the next one? And so I was on that hamster wheel for like, a good 3 years, and feeling super burned out. And if I wouldn't give myself that time really to like do what we were talking about, filling the well, which is why I probably burned out, right? And my books it took longer and longer to get them out, and I'd hear from people like, and then I'd miss deadlines, because and it wasn't that I wasn't working, it was just like, it was becoming like so hard, and I wasn't filling up, and I wasn't watching movies, and I wasn't reading books, and that was like a lesson in this series for me, is really like, you've got to, when you're doing like any big project, you have to find the time often to fill up, to fill up, to fill up. And it's okay to slow it down. And it's okay to, because that burnout's really a bad feeling. I mean, I was at a point, it probably like in book 7 and book 8, I remember walking with my husband saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. It's too stressful. It's too exhausting. And it's like writing. It's only like I'm living the dream, right? It's only something I wanted since I was 6 years old. But you just get so, if you're not, as you know this, I know you know this, if you're not filled, if you don't have that inside of you, it just, nothing works. So it's important.
Mhm. So important. And I love that you're naming it's like two sides of the same coin. Sometimes people, when we're wanting to create, we can feel really stuck and not be able to begin. And then on the other hand, sometimes
Yeah.
we are producing or doing so much and then getting into that place of burnout. And both of those sides of the coin to me are just sort of a signal that we're not in the centered part for ourselves, tending to
Right.
whatever we're really needing in that moment. I know also, Jules, just from chatting with you and seeing your work, that gratitude and beauty tends to be themes that come up a lot in your work as well. And
Yeah.
just hearing you talk about this, it brings to mind gratitude for me, of being grateful for the things that we have in our life and drawing more of that in to fill up our well. And I would just love to hear your take on what some of the benefits of gratitude are, and then if you have any favorite gratitude practices that you'd love to share.
Oh, gosh, I would. And Cynthia, you are just the master of gratitude. I mean, your whole website. I remember when you did come on the show a few years ago, and I was just gobbling your website up, and I was just like, wow, this woman just knows. She knows it. Gratitude just takes you into a different realm, right? And um, it's like this. It's for me, it really literally changed my life. And it's funny because my two, okay, so I'm a fiction writer and I'm a nonfiction writer. So I was writing my books, and they're both linked because I have a program called See the Beauty. And it's just basically gratitude writing journal where you draw little pictures every day of, I spent 20 minutes just drawing pictures every day in my journal to remind myself of like the beauty that was around me, right? And that whole program actually came out of me in the moment I was just talking about, where I was thinking of a plot, I was out walking, I wasn't noticing anything. I was just very much in my head and all my problems, which weren't problems. You just kind of get caught up sometimes in silly nonsense. But and I came back and I looked outside and it was like, oh, hey, I missed that beautiful day. I realized it as I was like looking outside, not when I was in it, right? And so that's when I started deciding to do that for myself, is just to remind myself not only of like nature, which I always am very grounded in nature. So it's really important. Trees, birds, mountains around me. I love that, but also just the beauty, which is just gratitude, and the people that are around me that I love, and the food that I'm eating, and like all the things that really most of the time, most of us just take for granted. We really do if we don't have some sort of practice. So I started that practice, and that was probably now 6 or 7 years ago. And then after a few years, I decided to, turn it into a program. And so that's what I had. It's called the See the Beauty program, and I still have it. And I still do it. And it always, and again, that also will ebb and flow. And what I notice is if I have not done it in a little while, I fall back into my old habits. I mean, that's what I always find so interesting, because sometimes you think, especially when you just start a practice, hey, I've got this. I've got this gratitude down. I've got it. But if you're not really being aware and making a point, at least for me, if I'm not making a point of doing my See the Beauty journal pretty much every day, I'll lose that thread, you know? And gratitude is just so beautiful. Like I think I said in the beginning, and I know, it just puts you into a different realm and a different feeling, and you're in touch with your higher spirit, the universe, whatever you want to call it. Because there really is so much to be thankful for every day. There really is. We live in this like incredible world. And even today, even with hard times, even with challenges, I think it's probably even especially important to say, hey, but I have this like food, even though, it's a different way of getting food if you're getting it delivered, right? Or maybe you're in the store, like, like a 5-minute run in and out, but there's still so much beauty in the world. So those are did I answer your question, or did I go off on I don't know. I might have. Was I ranting?
I love tangents. Most of my conversations are very tangential.
Oh, good.
But I love too that you bring up this point around it being a practice, so like almost a muscle that we're building to have that awareness and come back to a place of gratitude. And I just know there's so much research that supports that now, that we can actually rewire our brains as we do a gratitude practice. And then that can help us where we just automatically are looking and seeking for things that are that would offer us gratitude throughout the day. So I think it's just so powerful. And I love that you point out that reminder of returning back to it.
Thank you, Cynthia. You know, I have this little part, this little section in my book, and I think it really helps me. You know, I always, whenever I write, I feel like a lot of times it just kind of comes through, and then I read it and I go, oh yeah, that's pretty clever. And it's not me. That's how I always feel. It wasn't me writing that particular part, but this part was about just the focus. It's almost like your mind has this amazing job of focusing on things, right? And if you're like in a really bad mood, you're going to be focusing on, you know, all this kind of goofy, silly, stupid stuff of the day. Like, you know, you didn't get the parking spot that you wanted. You know, maybe you're not getting along with a neighbor and, you know, you just are thinking about that. Or maybe a bill came in you weren't expecting, right? Your camera is going. But if you're like in a different mood, if you're like in a really happy mood, all those things could still be there, but you're focusing maybe that your kids came to visit you, or that you know, you decided to have an ice cream sundae and you really, really enjoyed it. Or, you know, you start just focusing on all the beauty that's in your life. And what I found is both of those things are always there side by side in your day. Every single day you have beautiful things and you have, you know, just sort of the challenges of your day. And it's not to say that sometimes, you know, life can be heartbreaking and it can sometimes bring you to your knees. It's not that, you know, that what is that, the rose tinted glasses all the time on. That, you know, that's definitely not what we're talking about here. But to spend at least a little time looking, you know, adjusting your lens and looking at these beautiful things that are in your life is just a beautiful way to live. It really is. And doing it every single day. And for me, I really have to do some sort of physical thing to keep myself in that practice. Because if it's up to my mind after a while, just, you know, I like the rewired. I'm looking forward to that coming. Yeah. You know, like I just find that for me, it just helps if I keep my journal.
Yeah, and I love that you also point out that it's really is about holding the entire breadth of our experience. Like
Yeah.
our lives are so complex, right? There's so many different parts moving all of the time. And to me, what I see and what I hear you talking about is that a lot of this gratitude practice, it is really tied to mindfulness, being really present and noticing all of the things that are in our lives. And what you're talking about is shifting the lens slightly. So we are aware of the things that maybe are more positive or that we're grateful for. And I know, again, apparently I'm on a research kick today, but I know that the negativity,
I love it. Tell me.
the negativity bias it's a proven thing that we tend to, by default, look at more so the things that are really difficult or challenging. So what I'm hearing you saying is it's not a matter of not looking at those. Our mind will do that automatically anyways. Instead, it's shifting our awareness so we can hold everything and be really grateful for the beauty that we see in those things in our lives.
That's exactly it. And that's so true about the negativity bias. That is like, really, that's just science. That's just everyone has that. And it's just our sort of natural go-to. You know, the other thing, Cynthia, I've been kind of working on these last week, is this, there's a woman, gosh, and I don't know her name. Jenny is her first name, but anyway, she's a singer, beautiful voice. And she sings a lot about mystics and stuff like that. But she has a song that's called Your Wounds Are Your Greatest Gift. And I've been really thinking about that lately, because a lot of people, obviously, in this last year have really gone through a lot and have a lot of wounds. And it's not that you obviously too, you need to live through them and feel them and not deny them, because there's really been some heavy things that have been, you know, we've all experienced, and we're all going through this, whatever we're going through is pretty nuts. But to kind of flip that upside down a little bit and to see, you know, that it could be your greatest gift, some of this stuff that you're going through. Like, what I always like to I have a class that I teach, and I always like to bring up the idea of, like, what has this year taught you? What have you learned about yourself this year? You know, what kind of like of course, like we're all kind of hunkering down. We're all kind of in a little like states of fear, and me too. But what else has all of this taught you? Maybe you've learned that you're really resilient, or maybe even something just, basic, like you're good on Zoom all of a sudden and you weren't before. Maybe you've made all these incredible contacts all over the world that you never thought you would, because you're home and you're taking classes that weren't available. So I always like to kind of flip things upside down, challenges especially, and just this idea about your wounds are your greatest gift, I think is really powerful.
I love that phrase. Creativity, especially whether it's writing or drawing or painting, whatever path someone chooses to explore. We see that so often with creativity, that it gives us an outlet to also deepen into and self-reflect around, well, what am I currently learning? What is coming up for me? And so I love that reminder that you just shared also. If someone is coming to a place where maybe this year is the year that they're wanting to explore their creativity more, maybe because of everything that's happened and they have more time, or they're in a place more of self-reflection or seeking, I'm curious if you have any words of wisdom or advice, or just sharing of your own path and journey for someone that would be just beginning.
Right. Well, I love that we talked about this already. Definitely to have a small practice at the beginning, just like you were saying, your 5-minute mindfulness. I love that so much, Cynthia. It's beautiful and perfect. And if you're wanting to write, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, 500 words a day. 500 words a day is literally like a few sentences, and everybody can do that. What I always, like to say too, is that to be super gentle with yourself, and we've talked a little bit about that too, but also to be gentle with yourself. There's being gentle, but there's also setting some goals, right? Like if you're super gentle and you're like, oh, I don't feel like doing it today, and I don't feel like doing it today, you're probably not going to get it done. So be gentle, but also hold yourself high and say, yeah, I've wanted to write this book my whole life, and this is my chance. And I'm going to start small. I'm going to do this, this 500 words a day is like one step on the journey, on the book journey, right? It's like kind of crazy. Sometimes I think about it. A year really goes by pretty fast. We've been in the state for a year, and we've gotten, better about kind of understanding what we can do and can't do. But I was thinking about that too. Like if anybody's listening right now and you want to write a book for 2021, this is really like the perfect time, because start now at 500 words a day. Your word count will increase as you go, and by the time Thanksgiving comes around, you're going to have a really great first draft of your book. And probably sooner than that. I'm just saying, if you just start carving out every day. So I think that's my biggest tip, would just be, it's like that thing about how do you eat an elephant? And it's like one bite at a time. And I probably shouldn't have said that, because I love elephants and no one should eat them. But, you just take it a little bit at a time. And I think it's like like something so small will be the center of this huge thing that you will create. So that's my number one tip.
I absolutely love that. I forget who said it, but someone has said that we tend to estimate what we can do in a short period of time, and we underestimate what we can do over time, cumulatively, perhaps in a year.
Love that. Yes.
And so, yeah, I have this image, of a snowball rolling downhill, and we can just pick up that little bit slowly.
Yeah. It's so, I love that, Cynthia. That's like perfect. It's so much better to do a little bit each day than I'll do it on the weekend, because you don't have that thread and you don't have that connection. And chances are you're not going to get, I know you know this, but when you're really working with creativity, you really want to connect with your muse, and your muse isn't there at the beginning. I mean, for me, she isn't. Every time I start a new book, it's almost like she's off in the corner. We'll see. Right. But the amazing and beautiful thing is when, it doesn't even take me that long, really, like 2 or 3 weeks of consistently doing like what we're talking about, she'll start showing up and giving me ideas and inspiration. And have you thought about this character or this, So it's much better to just carve out even 20 minutes a day for your creativity than, oh, on the weekend I'll do 7 hours. That for me, that never works.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's never
Yeah.
worked for me either. It doesn't feel as sustainable. But also, I noticed that it feels easier, like a more natural way of stepping back into my process of creativity the more that I do it. It's just like that muscle that we're building. So I love how you're
Right.
wording that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Yeah.
Jools, I'm so happy that you spent time today. And
Thank
I
you,
really want
Cynthia.
to say too, for anyone watching, especially if you have that desire or calling in you to write a book, I have that desire. I know so many people who have that desire. I feel like there's so many books that are never written because of a lot of other struggles. And so Jools is a book coach, and I'm going to put a link in the description box below if you're interested in finding out more about her or possibly working with her, because the world needs your specific book. So that's
It
just
does.
my, yeah.
Thank you, Cynthia. I really love that. They did some study. It's like 81% of, I think it's Americans, but I'm sure it's worldwide too, have a book that they think about that they want to write. 81%, and very, very few will do it. And I think 2021 is the time to write your book. I really do. So
Yeah.
thank you, Cynthia. I always have the best time with you, and thank you for having me.
To hear about our upcoming mindful creative shows and mindful art activities, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification, and I will see you in another video.